Welcome to the University of Michigan Dentistry Podcast Series, promoting oral health care worldwide.
In the restorative work, where we're going to restore the entire mouth, on an arch you may have as high as 16 preparations. It would be very difficult to prepare 16 preparations at one time. It would be most difficult to try to take impressions of 16 preparations at one time. So we broke the arch into convenient segments. We would do all the posterior teeth on one side. In this situation, the upper left side here, we had 2 posterior teeth to do. So in one appointment, we went ahead, made our preparations, took a segmental impression, and made our dies. On another appointment, we prepared the 3 teeth on this side. We took a segmental impression and made a silver-plated model of that segment. At this appointment now, we are going ahead and preparing the anterior teeth. We want to pick up a detailed impression of the anterior teeth, and while we pick up a detailed impression of the anterior teeth, we will have bonnets on the posterior teeth that we will pick up an impression. We'll go ahead and silver plate the anterior teeth, place the dies in the posterior bonnets, and we will have a model, working model, with all of the dies of the maxillary arch on the same working model. And we don't have to take impressions of more than 4 to 6 teeth. The segmental impressions that we have taken, we silver plate, and we make what we call a bonnet. Fabrication of the die can be a difficult step if you don't take certain precautions. The die may have undercuts in there because of flaws in the build-up material and the preparation and so on. These should be waxed out with wax. The die should be lubricated thoroughly with our Duralay lubricant. This is the lubricant that comes with the Duralay. And put a liberal amount of lubricant on the die. Then it is best, because the Duralay tends to shrink, to paint only half of the crown at a time. If you were to paint the whole crown all the way around the tooth and let it set up, chances are you will not get it off of the die. So we suggest that you go ahead and paint half. If I can find out how this goes back on there again. We would go ahead and paint half of the bonnet, as you see here. Take it off, make sure that it goes off and on, and then we go ahead and paint the other half of the bonnet, and we would make a bonnet that we could get off of the die. Because once you get a bonnet that sticks on there, it's very difficult to get off. So painting it in 2 halves, we can come up with a bonnet that fits the die. This bonnet has been trimmed with a rubber disc so that the margins are as fine as they can be. We can go to the mouth now with an explorer and tell whether the margins that we have on the die are accurate copies of the margins in the mouth. So now we can place this die in the mouth, on the tooth, As you can see here, we can go in there now and check the margins. We go around the margins just like we would a finished restoration. Therefore, the bonnet should be trimmed on the margins just like the finished restoration. We would go around and palpate and feel and observe all of the margin of the tooth to make sure that it's an accurate copy of the die was an accurate copy of our tooth. Once we've determined this, we go ahead and place all of the other dies in the mouth. Each bonnet now is placed on the teeth, and we can go around the margins of the die, checking for our accuracy. We have the dies and the bonnets for the opposite side. This can be done while we're waiting for the anterior packing material to work, so that while you have the anterior segment packed, you can go ahead and put your bonnets on the tooth and check the accuracy of the dies. Supposing one of the dies does not fit, or there's a discrepancy between the mouth and the die, you can go ahead at this time and pick up the one preparation that you have missed along with your anterior segment. So we have all of these in place. They fit snugly. We have verified the margins. Now we want to use them for our transfer. So the second thing that the bonnet is used for is a transfer in our impression for the dies of the posterior teeth. We don't want these to turn or come off of the teeth while we take our impression, but yet we don't want to cement them to place. So now we'll go ahead and tie these together with some Duralay on the proximal areas. Just take some Duralay on a paintbrush and lute these dies together. Lute all the dies together that can draw together. We know that these draw together because we made the temporary in a unit. So all of these bonnets that draw together, we're going to lute together so that they have less chance of coming loose or less chance of tilting or tipping in our impression. These are recording the position of our dies for the posterior teeth. We will go ahead and put our silver-plated dies in these bonnets after we've taken the impression, or silver-plated the impression. Just put enough Duralay on there to lute these together. Once that Duralay is set up, we can go ahead and paint these with some rubber base adhesive, and we're ready to go ahead and take our anterior segment impression along with the picking up of the posterior bonnets. We have the pack in place. We're waiting for it to retract the tissue. We have our bonnets in place on the posterior teeth. We have the assistant mixing the rubber base. When she gives us the 30-second indication, we'll go ahead and take the pack material out, dry out the sulcus, and be ready for the syringe. The purpose again of packing is to reflect the tissue, to dry up the hemorrhage, make everything ready. We just have a dry, reflected sulcus in order to get the impression. So now we can start removing the pack material from around the teeth. As we remove the pack material, we should observe each one of the sulcus areas and take care of any hemorrhage that might occur. Okay, that looks good. We'll go ahead and remove the others. The pack material must not be dry. If you pull out a piece of dry pack material, you're going to tear the epithelium in the crevice so that you would wind up with some hemorrhage. This side looks good. The tray is loaded. The syringe is loaded, the tray is loaded, and we're ready to inject. So we'll start on one side Inject completely around the sulcus area of each tooth. This is a fairly thin tip on the syringe, so we can get down into the crevice very nicely. Another way of getting the material down into the crevice is to blow the material into the crevice, but frequently, if you have a good needle tip on the syringe, you can get the material down in the crevice without any particular problem. I want to use it again. Making sure we've got all of the areas, all the crevice areas injected. Then if you're through with the injection, the tip can be removed from the syringe tip, which allows the material to come out more freely. And we cover the entire preparation. Make sure that our bonnets are up tight on the teeth in the posterior area. And we have our tray loaded, ready to seat the tray. Okay. Take the seat so that we would disrupt our bonnets, and then we let the material set up in the mouth the recommended length of time. The impression is removed from the mouth with a snap in kind of an action, and the material or the impression is washed. Check the bonnets to make sure that they are seated in the impression by placing an instrument inside them and pushing, and see if you get any bounce up and down. These are locked in there very well, as you can see by the rubber base that goes in between the bonnets. But make sure that the bonnets are seated and firmly in the rubber base. Then check the anterior impression to make sure that we have all of the margins, that we've got impression material extending below the margin. As you see here, we can see the impression material going below the margin of the preparation, and this would be a good impression of these areas. Go around each one of the teeth to make sure that we have a good extension of the rubber base below the margin, as we have in this case. The only questionable area that we have would be right along the labial margin of this impression right here. We got the rubber base is right at the edge of the margin. There isn't any beyond, so we're going to retake this one little segment or one little impression. We'll silver plate it and evaluate the die. It's much easier to evaluate the die than it is the impression. So we'll go ahead now and set this impression up for silver plating. We'll silver plate the anterior teeth, make dies of these teeth, removable dies, and then we will place the dies, posterior dies that we have and we verified, in the bonnets and pour up our master maxillary model.
You've been listening to a presentation from the University of Michigan School of Dentistry, which is dedicated to supporting open learning and open educational resources. This recording is licensed under the Creative Commons. It may be reused and redistributed for nonprofit use. Please attribute materials to the University of Michigan School of Dentistry and redistribute under this same license. For more information on how this and other University of Michigan School of Dentistry recordings may be used, visit www.dent.umich.edu/license. listening to a presentation from the University of Michigan School of Dentistry, which is dedicated to supporting open learning and open educational resources. This recording is licensed under the Creative Commons. It may be reused and redistributed for nonprofit use. Please attribute materials to the University of Michigan School of Dentistry and redistribute under this same license. For more information on how this and other University of Michigan School of Dentistry recordings may be used, visit www.dent.umich.edu/license.